All right, so yesterday we talked about the tropical rainforest, and I know that when I asked you about tropical rainforest, one of the things that we talked about was the fact that it had the word tropical in it, and we knew that tropical meant warm. What's the difference that you see today on the type of rainforest that I have on the board, Marielli? It says temperate rainforest. Temperate rainforest. So you're correct. It does have to do with a difference in temperature. The temperate rainforests are found on the coast, especially upper California, Oregon, and Washington. And there are some that stretch up into Alaska. There are some in the United Kingdom, Norway, and Japan, New Zealand. And they are very different from the tropical rainforest that I saw yesterday. Temperate rainforests have a very different climate. Temperate rainforests have a very different climate. Instead of 400 inches of rain a year, they get 60 to 200. That's still a lot of water, right? That's still a lot of water, but it's not as much. So it rains a lot, but not a whole lot. The temperatures there are milder. They're not hot because the temperate rainforest is not located on the equator. They are up further. They are lower than the tundra and the taiga. And they're a little closer to our latitude, but they are not going to be the same. It actually gets so foggy in these places that the fog provides about 7 to 12 inches of rain per year.
In the temperate rainforest, doesn't it have a lot of moss because there's a lot of trees?
And we will get to that. We'll get to all the moss. So when I'm looking at the notes that I had about the temperate rainforest, and I'm talking about the abiotic factors of the temperate rainforest. Number one, there's 2 different seasons. Long, cold, and wet winters and very short, dry summers. And even in the dry season, it still rains all the time anyway. The water, there's a lot of it, right? 200 inches, possibly between 60 and 200 inches a year. The sunlight is moderate. It's not intense like it is on the equator. It's not very light like it is in the tundra. It's in between. It's moderate. Looking at this picture, infer what you will about the soil in the temperate rainforest. Zoe. It's fantastic soil. Stuff grows all over the place there. And it has a lot to do with the climate and the soil. Plants. When I think of the temperate rainforest, I think of moss, and more moss. And that's one of the reasons why, Myra, that moss is one of the vocabulary words on our new packet. Again, like I said, we got a little bit ahead this week. This is something I should probably been talking about like Monday or so. Ooh, we're ahead. That's probably a good thing, right? There are lots of trees, large, old, thick trees that you'll see there, hemlocks and spruces and things like that. And there are conifer trees there, but it's mostly some of those bigger trees. There are things in there called nurse logs. When a tree falls and it starts to be broken down, and decaying, other things start to grow off of that nurse log as it decays over the years. And they're very interesting. And I think that would make a fantastic podcast if someone wanted to learn more about nurse logs in the temperate rainforest. Although we're going to see some other stuff here in a few minutes that I think might take precedence over that because you're going to be more interested in it than that. The main adaptation for plants to live in a rainforest is they have to overcome the excessive amount of rain. You've got to be able to overcome the excessive amount of rain as a plant in the rainforest. Of course, we've talked about the abiotic factors, the sun, the soil, the climate, and the water, and we've talked about the plant side of the biotic factors. There are also animals that live in the temperate rainforest as well. This is one of them. This is called a banana slug. I have seen one in real life, and my son tried to pick it up because he thought someone had left their banana on the trail. because it was laying on the railing of the bridge we were crossing, Luke. And they do look, they're big. They're not little. We're not talking those little things that crawl across our driveway. These are big slugs. And I don't know if it says it in there, but they're one of the bigger slugs. That might be on the next page. There's a lot of insects that live in the rainforest. There's cougars and bears. There's bobcats. There's birds. There's different types of amphibians and reptiles, and they all love it. But the most important, the keystone animal, in my opinion, is down here at the bottom. The elk is the most important animal of all. Because the rainforest grows so much stuff, Emma, it's stuff just growing everywhere. If we didn't do something to it, it would overgrow. And what would we call that if I had too many plants, too many trees, too many bushes, too many ferns, too much moss, and that the forest could no longer support that, Ava? We are exceeding the carrying capacity. But luckily, these elk are big, giant. They're like twice, maybe even 3 times the size of a deer. They have huge horns, and they trample all through this forest, foraging and eating the whole time. They keep the forest from overgrowing. They keep the forest in balance. That's why I think they are the keystone species of the temperate rainforest. I almost said tropical. Of the temperate rainforest. If the elk were not there, I don't know how long the temperate rainforest would make it. It would just become overgrown and thick, and it would not be a good thing. And that's something to think about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the banana slugs. I put this in here because every time I talk about banana slugs, somebody gets overly excited about them. You're welcome to go back and look at this page when it's time to look at banana slug pages, right? That's fine. If you are an animal, even the banana slug, living in the temperate rainforest, the big thing you have to overcome, you have to be able to live in the winter because it's pretty cold there during the winter, and you have to be able to survive an excessive amount of water, right? You cannot have a coat of fur that soaks up water and keeps you wet. The water kind of needs to roll off of you, and you need to shake it off and stay as dry as possible. Otherwise, you would not be able to survive. Now, the temperate rainforest gets quite a bit of rain. And the tropical rainforest gets even more rain than that. However, Maggie, when I think of the desert, I don't think of a lot of rain, do you? Matter of fact, there's one desert, the Atacama Desert in Chile. It only gets about 1 millimeter. I'll show you what that looks like on a ruler. One millimeter of rain every 5 to 20 years. I wouldn't put it on there if I wasn't serious. That's not a lot of rain, is it? Now, that's the extreme version of a desert, okay? Because obviously we know that it has to rain sometimes in the desert because they have plants there, they have animals there that live. Correct, Jasper? I mean, you know it rains some, but again, you know that there's going to be adaptations to live in this area. Because if I were to talk about, and this one I'm not going to write on the board because you have it right here on the anchor chart. If I'm going to talk about the abiotic factors of the desert, it really depends on who you are. I know me, one of the first things that comes to my mind, if I close my eye and think about the desert, is the climate. It is hot. Why is it hot? Because the sun is intense. Why is that such a huge factor? Because there's not a lot of water. And to make it even worse, you can't grow a lot of stuff there, Matthew, because the soil stinks. It's like the opposite of the temperate rainforest and the tropical rainforest. The soil there is terrible. It's sand. You're not growing a lot there. So when you're talking about the abiotic factors of the desert, you should be telling me that the soil is bad because it's sand. You should be telling me that the water is very little because it doesn't rain a lot there. You should be telling me that the sunlight is very intense and that the climate is very hot. It stays hot there a lot. Now, there are deserts that are cold, like the tundra. We're not getting into that. We're talking about your general hot desert that you would see, that you think of when you think desert, not something strange that's laying out there. Okay, we're talking about your general desert, not some random desert that we're talking about. Again, the seasons in hot and dry deserts are usually very hot and then warm the rest of the year. So it's hot in the summer and warm the rest of the year. If it doesn't cool off here soon in North Carolina, I'm going to think that I live in a desert. It's stinking October, right? It's time to be cool. I need some 70-degree weather, please and thank you. So that it's just cool enough in the morning that you might need a jacket, but man, is it beautiful during the day, right? It's time for the golf courses to be full, the disc golf courses to be full. I know Jasper's not going to cry if it gets into the 70s and he's outside playing soccer or golf, right? Because 70s are nice, aren't they? 90s stinks. I don't care what sports you're playing unless it's swimming, but even that's hot because it's not very fun. It gets so hot, and this is kind of wild. Rain is light in the desert, and it comes in short bursts, but sometimes it's so hot that it evaporates faster than it's raining, meaning it hits the ground because the ground's so hot, the water evaporates almost immediately, and it's almost like it didn't rain at all. It's almost like, thanks for teasing me with the rain, but there's really nothing going on here. So, Trent, if you lived in a place that has intense sunlight, it's hot all the year round, day and night, there's not a lot of water, and the soil stinks, you're a plant. How do you adapt to that? You have to go a long time without water. Do you know of a plant that you might find in the desert that can go a long time without water? Cactus. And we learned today that some cactus can go as much as 2 years without water. They're like the camels of the plant world, right? They're like the they store water forever. And somebody said, well, Mr. Bullens, why do they have thorns all over them? To stop people from eating them. Because if you're an animal and you're like, hey, there's a cactus, it stores water on the inside of it. If I eat that, I'll at least get some water. And the cactus is like, no. Who in here gets a little cranky when you get hot? If I get hot, trust me, I have thorns of words that come out of my mouth. Leave me alone. Get away from me. It's hot. Right? I can't stand it. I hate it. I do not like being hot and sweaty. It's miserable. I enjoy nice, cool weather. Now, if I'm at the beach and I'm playing or something, that's one thing. But as a normal, like if it was hot in here, I know some of you are like, I need a sweatshirt. It's so cold in your room, Mr. Bowens. I'm way better being cool than I am hot. And you should be happy that it's not hot in here. You pretty much have to be a cactus in order to survive in the desert. You have to adapt to hot, sand, and little water and intense sunlight. And the cactus has everything for that. They store water for a long time. Their roots are not very deep, but they're spread way out across the sand. So any water that falls, they've got like this giant umbrella of roots reaching way out into the desert to soak up any water that falls as quick as it gets evaporated. They have to do that. You don't need to know about creosote bushes, sage brushes, and osotillos. I would have to look up how to even say that. You don't need to know about that. Cactus is the plant that's going to show up in a question. Would you agree with that, Jacob? They're not going to ask you about a creosote bush. It's just not possible. Desert animals. It's a very cute animal. We're going to watch a very cool video about this fennec fox in just a minute. You would think there's not a lot of animals in the desert because of the low amounts of water, but that's not true. There's reptiles, there's lizards, there's insects and snakes. There are mammals like this little fox. There's kangaroo rats who have adapted to the heat. Many of them live in the ground during the day and come out at night to get their food, right? Many of them have adapted to not taking in a lot of water. As a matter of fact, I remember studying with my one group of robotics kids 2 years ago. Meerkats can go their entire life without drinking water. They get all of their juice and their liquids from the bugs that they eat. Yeah, I know that sounds pretty gross.
No, that sounds interesting.
It is. It's different. So we're going to talk about this little guy here in just a second, and I think it is right here. So for my YouTubers, later on, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. All right, bye.